Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session today. My name is Karine Panza. I'm a children's books publisher from Brazil, a former president of the International Publishers Association, IPA. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here to moderate this panel with these wonderful ladies. So, Awake, Not Sleeping, the title of this session reminds us of the importance of being alert to the stories we tell and the stories we inherit. It's about staying awake to the power of words, the ways that narratives shapes our societies, especially for women and girls, and how literature has always carried a transformation power. Words shape how we see the world, challenge stereotypes, and inspire social change. For generations, books have been both refugee and liberation, especially for women whose voices are too often silenced or erased. Today, we'll meet 4 inspiring women whose work crosses borders, genres, and realities. Elisa Fernandes, Deputy Regional Director for UN Women, Europe and Central Asia, welcome. Thank you. Francesca Cavallo, writer and creator from Italy, known for Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls and other global projects empowering young readers. Ekaterine Togenidze, sorry for my pronunciation, writer and activist from Georgia, whose work gives voice to women and people with disabilities and challenges social perspectives. Ionela Hadarka, author from Moldova, whose writings empower women and whose children's books bring civic values, inclusion, and empathy to life, even in difficult times. So let's begin this panel with a question for the 3 of you. I'd like to listen from you. So in your view, how can literature and stories you write help transform social norms and challenge deeply the rooted ideas about gender and that shape our societies? Each of you work with different perspectives through children's stories, activism, and fiction. But all of you write and work with a purpose. Elisa, would you like to share with us the UN Women perspective on this subject?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. It is my true pleasure to be among all of you. Allow me to give you a little bit of an introduction. Well, I work for UN Women, that is the United Nations entity for gender equality and empowerment of women. And I wanted to make reference to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular to SDG 5, or the Sustainable Development Goal on 5, that is a global aspiration, a global agreement in what we aspire to achieve for women and girls. And we want to achieve a world where all women and girls can live a life that is free from discrimination, free from violence, where all girls have access to the rights, participation, and possibility to lead in all spheres of life. For that, we need a society where social norms do not put women and girls in a box, where they have opportunity to dream, where they have opportunity to see themselves in different ways, to have different aspirations. And this is why we believe that a space like words, books, the literary world, it's a space of transformation. It's a world where allows women and girls to think themselves differently. If we create this space where we can have different kind of writers, different kind of narratives to express themselves. And I want to finish with a story that UN Women, like a few years ago, had an initiative that was awaking, not asleep, and it had to do precisely with inviting writers to question the traditional fairy tales. So we invited writers to rewrite the stories so that instead of a princess being saved, it was about narratives of girls dreaming, girls daring, girls or women achieving. And the beauty of this initiative is that once the stories were rewritten, children, girls and boys were narrating the stories. And the whole objective was to create a space to rethink ourselves. And I think this is the context and the enabling environment we would like to create.
That's from where we start. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very, very good. So let's go to Ekam.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be the part of this really inspiring event. Narratives that I write and topics that I choose, first of all, shape my own personality. For example, when I started writing about people with disabilities, and it was kind of a new topic in Georgian literature, it meant for me some responsibility because I had to understand this topic first of all. So I started communicating with people with disabilities, listening to them, to their needs and challenges, and then writing. Also, it's changed my behavior, not only thoughts and not only questions that came to my mind, but also simple things in life. For example, when I wanted to go out and to have a coffee, I was trying to find the cafe that is accessible for everyone in order my friends to be able to join me there. Or when I was planning my book presentation, I didn't pick a nice bookstore or a comfortable hall that has no access for people with different disabilities, and I always wanted to have one with universal design. Also, I used the book as a direct tool. A few years ago, I dedicated my book to 2 girls in Georgia, in Tbilisi, that had a very rare disease, blood disease, thalassemia is the name. And it was, for me, I was involved in promotion and talking about this disease in order to push government to put this disease on a national list of rare diseases. And we succeeded. It was a great win, and for me it was the example that book can open discussions and direct attention of media and society to something serious.
Sharing empathy. Thank you so much. How about you, Francesca?
So my perspective is that we forget how impactful stories we consumed as kids are. We remember a few stories, but we're not aware of the fact that what we come to expect from the world, what we believe that the world expects from us, derives in big part from the stories that we read as children. When I created Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls, I started from analyzing female characters in traditional fairy tales, because I wanted to understand where was the culture of subalternity associated with the nature of women, where was it coming from? And you see, traditional fairy tales are the fossils of human culture. If a person that is not a geologist sees a fossil, all they see is a rock. But if a geologist sees that fossil, they can see the history of the planet in that rock. And fairy tales are the exact same thing, because they are this distillated form of human knowledge of the most fundamental messages that we believe must be passed on to the next generations. So when I created Stellar Stories for Boys of the Future, I did the same thing. I went back to traditional fairy tales, and this time around, I analyzed male characters, because I had assumed that they were much freer than female characters. But when I had to write for boys, when I gave myself this mission, I wanted to question the idea that I personally held that boys are more aggressive, that they are naturally, that they don't have the same kind of empathy. So I asked myself, is it possible that just like we created a subalternity for women, we created a culture of aggression for men? And I found plenty of evidence in traditional fairy tales. So part of the revolution there is the fact that children's literature is the most political form of literature there is. Because what children believe the world expects from them becomes our future.
The truth for the future. Wonderful. Great point, Francesca. And Ionela, what's your point on this?
Well, my point is approximately the same. I'm often been asked, how do we maintain children's interest to literature in nowadays when there are so many ways of distracting them and transmitting the message? But you know, the book and the process of reading is a very intimate process for me. It's like whispering something to somebody's ear. And I think that we should use this approach towards speaking to women. Because when we want to transmit a message, the women has to have the feeling that there is somebody that deeply understands her. For example, I am not only a writer, I am the ambassador of the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence in my country, and I am meeting women and speaking to women very often. And what I was annoyed about is that approach that the motivational writers and speakers use. Because, for example, in my country, I'm going to rural areas where women don't have access to normal sanitation, normal toilets. They're raising their children there. They're starting their lives with sexual and physical and psychological violence, and they don't speak about it because they don't believe that there is somebody to help them, and because their mothers live like that, you know. And what motivational speakers and writers do, they base their message with you can do everything, everything is possible for you girls. But I know that for women that message might sound fake, you know. And we started our collaboration with the UN Women in Moldova by writing a book that I intend to explain women first what is happening with them. Both physically and psychologically. Well, because the book will have the title "The Price of a Smile," because they say always that we are equal and we have equal rights, and this is true. But I personally think that women often, in majority of cases, pay more in order to see themselves smiling. We have a collaboration with endocrinologist and gynecologist and with a psychiatrist, and we started by explaining them from the physiological point of view what is happening in a woman's body first, monthly, and then in life. And both when they are feeling low, and how they can change it by their routine, by becoming financially independent, by setting limits, and so on.
Well, that's very hard. Thank you. Thank you so much, and congratulations on your work. So thank you for all your reflections. Now I would like to go a little bit deeper on your personal journeys as writers. And how do you see your personal role on shifting the world? Francesca, you've been at the forefront of changing how we tell stories to children. You're responsible for that, especially stories about girls and women. But in a world that is rapidly changing, how do you feel your responsibility as a writer has changed?
Well, I would argue with, especially with women and girls, since now for the past 3 years I've been working on boys and masculinity. So that is probably also the answer to your question. When I travel the world with Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls, many parents, everywhere really, asked me a question that really annoyed me. And that question was, what about boys? And I was very enraged because I thought that they wanted to take something away from the work that I was doing to empower girls.
No, they want to empower the boys as well.
And it wasn't until I had my first nephew, and when my niece was born the same year that Rebel Girls came out. So for me, that year was 2016. It was, I was living in the US, it was Hillary Clinton campaign, Rebel Girls came out, I had a niece. So for me, everything was like girl power, the future is female, I wanted to be the cool feminist aunt and all of that. And I went to buy her presents when she was born, and I bought her items from the girls' aisle, from the boys' aisle, because I wanted her to feel that the world was her oyster, that she should just follow her curiosity wherever it led. 3 years later, I had been deconstructing gender stereotypes everywhere in the world. I am a queer person. My nephew was born. I went back to the same shop because it was a cool auntie kind of shop. And I was unable to buy anything from the girls' aisle. Not just that, but I walked out of that store with an impossibly cute aviator bomber jacket. So the first gift that I gave to my nephew was a military piece of clothing. I became very much aware that over the past 10, 15 years, we've done a lot of changes to the kind of education we give to girls. And we are seeing the results of that change, of offering them different role models. But we haven't changed the kind of education that we give to boys. So presently, we are still educating boys the same way that we were 20, 30, even 40 years ago, but we are expecting completely different results. So part of the reason of the current polarization comes from the fact that we are educating boys with models in mind that then when they grow up have a sort of a toxic expectation towards what is the kind of behavior that is expected of them when they are adults. So my work changed in the sense that I realized that the project that I started with Rebel Girls would not be complete until I also found a way to speak to boys. And I wrote Rebel Girls in 4 months. This book took 3 years to be created. And the reason is that I had to dismantle my own distrust of boys. This was the hardest part. Because a part of me, I had to admit to myself that a part of me did not trust boys. So this is how my work has changed.
Oh, gosh. Eka, we're running out of time, but I want to ask another question for each of you. As a writer, shifting the world marked by new conversations on diversity, equality, and rights, how do you see your voice shaping the new reality?
First of all, it's so interesting and inspiring to listen to you both and all of you. I think that I have a challenge to be always up to date. Because, for example, about disabilities, there was a very famous motto, nothing about us without us. But we are evolving. We are not standing still. And few years later, the motto has changed. And it's a very meaningful and important change. They shortened it, nothing without us. Not about us without us, but nothing without us. Because there is no sphere in life from where you can just exclude people with disabilities. And this diversity is, I believe, that it's the main treasure of humanity. And mentioning mental health and psychiatrists and these kind of things, disabled women are experiencing double discrimination. They don't get, nobody consider them to become mothers. They don't get reproductive health service and so on. And now in Georgia, there is, we are dealing with horrible dark times. Our pro-Russian government is oppressing us and our society. Now they jailed one wonderful teacher, a female teacher, and they were trying to, it was a defamation that they were using her physical disability to prove that she was mentally disabled and to put the stigma and to discredit her. So this is what is happening. And of course, I see my voice everywhere like a citizen to participate in protest. And the late book, my latest book was about First Georgian Republic. It was 1918, 1921, only 3 years, then Russia occupied us again. And we had female members of parliament. It's an incredible thing. So I was writing about those women, and I got a very emotional, very touching feedback from a reader who said that when pro-Russian government of Georgia adopted those illegal laws and protest began in the country, she couldn't join the protest because she was not able, she had no babysitter. She has 2 kids. And then she read my story and she said she learned that those women, those 5 members of parliament, they also had families and kids, but they were still able to fight against the regime under this horrible pressure. They were tortured, killed. And she said, okay, then I can do that too. So books are really connecting past and present, and they are living bridges between people and between times.
Thank you, Eka. Ionela, your work with children and children's literature connects imagination and education, equality and inclusion. But now you're writing a book to empower women. What does it mean to be a writer in times of uncertainty change?
Well, I don't focus very much on that. My purpose is, you asked why I'm working on those 2 lines. I strongly believe that when the mom is happy, the kid is also happy. My books are for mutual reading. I want the parents and kids read together and discuss. That's my main purpose. And to enjoy. I want my people to learn to enjoy, because I'm traveling.
Live life together.
Yes, but also to appreciate little things, because I travel in Europe and I always admire how people are able to enjoy little things and pleasure and to smile to each other. In Moldova, everything is very serious, you know? And I would very much like to change that.
Thank you, thank you. So before we close, I would like to invite Elisa once again for a brief reflection and to help us to connect with today's discussion. Tell us a little bit more about...
I have 22 seconds.
Yeah, they're going to give us a little bit more, aren't they?
Hello. Yeah. So with the 22 seconds, 15 seconds that I have, first of all, thank you. I think on behalf of all the audience, for the honesty, for the conviction, for representing diverse voices, diverse realities, for the honesty on the inquiry. You know, like I completely identified with what you say, with my own prejudice. We need to create that self-awareness, that social dialogues, that question our own preconditions, pre-thoughts, you know. I was trying to convey the questioning of the fairy tales, but you really express it in a way that precisely really describe and explain it. I think what we see is the power of transformation again. What I wanted to say is a tool, literature, words, books, is really a powerful tool to promote gender equality and really understanding, dialogue, respect, and not putting one gender over the other, but really creating a situation where there is mutual recognition and with this mutual acknowledgement and respect of all diversity, and provide voice to those voices that are normally not being heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Elisa. So with this, I would like to invite you to think about which stories are we asleep to? Which stories we haven't heard yet that we are asleep to? Thank you so much, ladies. It was wonderful to have you here.